Imagine if I told you that God's will for your life could be summarized in just 3 short verses. Not a 500-page book, not a complicated formula, just 3 commands that, if lived out, could transform your soul, your mindset, and even how you see the world. That's exactly what Paul gives us in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. Rejoice always, pray continuously, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ. At first glance, it sounds simple, but when you stop and really think about it, it feels impossible. How can anyone rejoice always? How do you pray without ceasing? And how do you honestly give thanks when life feels unbearable? First part, rejoice always. The word rejoice here doesn't mean fake happiness or walking around with a forced smile. Paul isn't saying ignore your pain. He wrote these words to the church in Thessalonica, a church that was being persecuted, attacked, and misunderstood. These weren't people living comfortable lives. They were people living in the fire. And yet, Paul says, rejoice always. Why? Because joy isn't tied to circumstance. It's tied to Christ. Happiness shifts with the weather, with bank accounts, and with relationships. But joy is rooted in the person who doesn't change. It's a defiance against despair, a reminder that no matter how dark it gets, the light of Christ is still burning. To rejoice always means to choose perspective, to see even in the midnight hour through the lens of eternity. Pray continually. This doesn't mean spending 24/7 on your knees in a quiet room. Paul isn't telling us to abandon our jobs, families, or responsibilities. What he is describing is a posture of the heart. To pray continually means to live in constant awareness of God's presence, like a running conversation with Him throughout the day. You don't just check in with Him in the morning and at night. You walk with Him in every step of your day. Think of it like breathing. Prayer isn't an event. It's the oxygen of the soul. Just as your body dies without breath, your spirit grows weak without prayer. And here's the beauty. Continual prayer means you're never truly alone. Even in the silence, even in the chaos, your heart can whisper to God and He hears. Give thanks in all circumstances. Now, this is where it gets tough. Notice Paul doesn't say give thanks for all circumstances. He says in all circumstances. There's a difference. You don't have to thank God for the sickness, the heartbreak, or the betrayal, but you can thank Him in the middle of it, because gratitude is an anchor that holds you steady in the storm. When you give thanks, you're declaring that your circumstances don't define God's goodness, His character does. Gratitude is what transforms suffering into strength, pain into purpose, and chaos into peace. It's not denial, it's defiance, a refusal to let bitterness rule your heart. God's will for you. We often ask, what is God's will for my life? We expect something dramatic, a career, a path, a calling, a life-altering decision. But here Paul gives us the answer in 3 commands. God's will is not first about where you live, what job you take, or who you marry. His will is about who you are becoming in Christ. Someone who chooses joy even in hardship. Someone who walks with God in constant prayer. Someone who practices gratitude no matter the season. This is His will, not just for a few super Christians, but for you too. So maybe tonight, when the weight of life feels heavy, remember these 3 commands. Rejoice always, not because life is perfect, but because Christ is present. Pray continually, not out of duty, but because your Father longs to walk with you. And give thanks in all circumstances. Not because everything is good, but because God is still good. This is God's will for you, and sometimes the most powerful obedience begins with the smallest, simplest steps. Have a good day, guys. Bye.